Good evening and welcome everyone. Uh, we have today our first session for this newly formed members and business and industry and business committee. I'd like to first invite President CA Gada to share a few words. Vineet
Thank
bhai.
you. Thank you, Akash. Good evening, everybody. This is the first event of this committee. In this year, we have formed this particular committee for members in industry. Previously, this committee was part of Young and Industrial Members Committee. The reason to carve out this particular committee is to have a focused program or for the members in industry. This is the first event, and I will request that whoever are part of this particular session can connect to any of our committee members to address and or give your suggestions as to what all things we can do for you, what all type of programs we can arrange for you, so that it becomes easy for us also to understand what are your desires or what are your expectations from the association. We will be very happy to have more and more programs for members in industry. This is the first one that we are trying. We have few more in pipeline, but once we get understanding from your side, it becomes easy for us also. Just to have 2 3 upcoming programs of association. So we are having one movement, you can say, which is called as a No WhatsApp Day. We will be celebrating, many of us will be celebrating on 7th September, Savansari. So this year we are planning that entire community celebrates No WhatsApp Day on that particular day. Messages will be rolled out, and we had already rolled out a message for a reel competition on No WhatsApp Day. So I'll request that whoever is very active on Instagram or any of the social media can make that reel and spread the awareness of No WhatsApp Day. Thank you. And now, Akash, you can take the proceedings further.
Vineet, if I can take 1 minute just
Yeah.
to add on to what you have said.
Yeah.
Everyone traditionally, I think CVOCA association has been perceived as just for practice, members in practice. I think that is what over the last few years we've been trying to change, to see how members in industry also can be active part of it. I understand that members in industry are pretty occupied, they have long working hours, but the intent is to bring this group together to solve common problems. Many of them have similar problems. If they can interact with each other and provide solutions, I think that will be much more easier, much more interactive, and adding a lot of value to everyone. So I think I would call upon all members in industry to reach out to their counterparts also and bring them for such programs.
Yes. So just adding to what Jignesh Bhai said, Jignesh Bhai being in an industry, he is contributing a lot to the association activities, and he is working very hard to get members in industry also active for the association purpose and for the common benefit also. Thank you, Akash. Akash, you are on mute.
Thank you very much, Vineet bhai and Jignesh bhai. Indeed, it is our endeavor to bring members in industry closer together with our members in practice, and have hopefully have more engagement and more interaction with you. I think okay. We have with us Central Council member Preeti Ben. Preeti Ben, I think Kunjan has unmuted you. Please.
Yeah, thank you, Akash and Vinith and entire team. I want to share one thing, that 60% of our membership, I was just reviewing it about CVOCA, and 60% of our membership is members in industry. And that is why I wanted to share the importance of this committee is very much. And I hats off to Vinith for having this committee, new committee. And I think with the support of Jignesh Bhai, Preeti Ben, and entire committee, this can do wonders. And more involvement means non-technical topics where these members are interested, we can plan it out. So we have to ensure that how can we reach out to all the members. So thank you and wish you all the best.
Thank you very much, Preeti bhai, for your kind words.
Akash,
Yes,
Akash,
Ketan, please.
one more announcement. Those our members who are members in industry, for them, I just want to mention that at the Western India Regional Council level, there's a CFO forum. So, if you can, if those who are CFO and CEO can share sometime their details, so that what I will do is I will get their name added to the mailing list of WIRC, and whenever there is a CFO forum happening, you all can come and attend. Those who are from industries can come and attend.
Thank you very much. Ketan bhai is our representative at the regional council, and thank you very much, Ketan bhai, also for
Thank
your
you.
guidance. So we'll begin with the program proper. I'd like to invite committee member CA Preeti Chheda to give us a brief introduction of our speaker for the evening.
Thank you, Akash. So I would firstly like to thank CVOCA Association to give me this opportunity to introduce our today's learned speaker, CA Preeti Chheda. So CA Preeti Chheda is a qualified chartered accountant with over 23 years of work experience. She is also a company secretary and a CFA chartered holder. CA Preeti Chheda has also passed the uniform CPA examination from the Colorado State Board of Accountancy, USA. CA Preeti Chheda is the CFO of K. Raheja Corp Investments Managers Private Limited, managers to Mindspace Business Parks REIT. CA Preeti Chheda has been associated with K. Raheja Corp Group for over 17 years across various roles in commercial real estate, including equity and debt fund raising, acquisitions, raising private equity for real estate projects, investor relations, and financial reporting. Before joining K. Raheja Corp Group, she has worked with Marico Limited, Shell Gas, and Keynes Energy. She is also a member of the Hybrid Securities Advisory Committee constituted by the SEBI and on the Expert Committee on REITs and InvITs in IFSC. She has also won the Economic Times Best CFO in Financial Leadership Awards 2024 and the Business World Best Woman CFO Awards 2024. With this brief introduction, I would like to welcome CA Preeti Chheda on behalf of entire CVOCA Association for today's seminar. Over to you, Akash.
Thank you, Pratik bhai. Indeed, we have a very wealth of experience with us. So, on behalf of the association, as a small token of our appreciation, would request Pratik bhai to share the e-certificate as a mark of our appreciation.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. Thank you.
Thank you, Preeti Ben.
for being on the
Warm welcome to you.
Thank you.
We also have with us to moderate the session and have a communication and have an interplay with the learned speaker, our very own Jignesh Kenia. He's an advisor to the committee, and he has kindly made time from his busy schedule to help us out with this session. To introduce briefly the moderator, I would invite Dharmi Darod.
Thank you, Akash. It's been a privilege to welcome Jignesh Bhai, who is a core member and one of our legacy committee member. Jignesh Bhai is a chartered accountant and a company secretary with over 25 years of experience in consultancy, media, and entertainment and startups. He has invested in 105 startups and runs Signal Ventures, a network which funds early-stage startups. He is currently the president, corporate strategy and digital transformation at Times Network, looking after growth initiatives, pricing strategy, technology, and channel operations. Prior to that, Jignesh Bhai spent a decade at UTV and Walt Disney, where he was a CFO for the broadcast business of UTV. He's launched 16 TV channels and 6 digital platforms in his career. He started his career with KPMG as tax and consulting. We welcome you, Jignesh Bhai, for today's moderation.
Thank you so much, Dharmi. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Jignesh Bhai. As a mark of our appreciation, would request Pratik Bhai to share the e-certificate to Jignesh Bhai. Jignesh Bhai, thank you very much.
Thank you, Akash.
Pratik Bhai. Pratik Bhai, can you hear me?
I think there is some issue from Pratik's side. So Jignesh bhai,
Yeah.
I welcome you all and I thank you for being moderator for this particular session. And we can start with the session now.
Sure.
Please, floor is all yours.
Thank you, everyone. I think thank you for the privilege. I think when it was Preeti, so I said it'll be fun talking to her. This. So I mean, we have known each other since years. So indeed, my privilege to be talking to Preeti. So Preeti, great. It's been a long journey and tons of achievements on this. But let's go a bit into flashback. I mean, during school days, your academics, early academics. So how were you as a student during school days?
Right. So before I get started, let me thank CVOCA and all you guys for having me here. I'm not too sure whether I deserve to be here or not, but anyways, thanks a lot for having me here. And I think I'm as learned as any one of you. I don't think anything more, but I'll be happy to share my experiences with you all if that can add any value to people present here. So if I were to go back, it's not been such a, I would say, illustrious school days or the college journey. I just started like a student, any student who was not very clear what she wanted, but played along, let's see where the career takes. And obviously, in 1992 is when I cleared my 10th, 94 is when I passed out my 12th, and 97 is when I passed out my TY. Now, obviously, in 10th, when I had to make a career choice, today people have lot many options, and I think children have lot more risk-taking appetite. In our old days, Jignesh, honestly, we didn't really have too many options. And even if we had, I don't think we were those enterprising ones who really wanted to take a very unconventional career, so to say. We were very content with the same CA, CS, ICWA, MBA. Those were the very conventional career choices which most of us made. Of course, there are always exceptions, but these were kind of choices which we made. I was just one amongst them. Coming from a background or a family background which is more into business, obviously commerce made fundamental choice. So I said, fine, let's go ahead. Eldest is also was a commerce graduate and of course a CA. And for me, that was a logical path to get on. So I said, okay, let me take commerce and then we'll figure out what's to be done. And I was not a very serious student at all. I didn't even think at that point in time I could even achieve a single professional degree beyond graduation. That was the only thought I had in mind. Let's finish graduation, then fir dekha jayega kya karna hai. And then obviously, if that's the attitude, then you give as much, or you put in as much effort, keeping that in mind. But it just so happened, I don't think it was by design, it was more by chance, that in 12th, I landed up securing a 9th rank in the board. I don't know how that happened. It's still a mystery to me. But I think that was the biggest turning point in my life, wherein I didn't ever think that I could do something like this. I didn't even think that I had the potential to secure a rank. But I think that completely changed my own perception of myself. And I thought that, no, I have something I can achieve better than just being a commerce graduate. And that's when I said, okay, now let me embark on something better. I started with the CA Foundation. I think that was the first year or maybe the second year when they had actually started this foundation course. So, but I did my foundation and I left it there because I did not want to do my articleship from a smaller firm. My aspiration was to do with the Big Four. And at that point, Big Four were not so accommodating. They wanted full time. I could not give. So I said, okay, never mind. Let me give my foundation. And I wait to finish my graduation, then again pick it up. And in the meantime, I finished my CS. And then, of course, after my graduation, I went to pick up my articles with Pricewaterhouse. I spent 3 years doing my articles with PwC, finished that, and then picked up my first job, which was Marico. Now, again, I think there again, honestly speaking, obviously I was a ranker both in inter and final. So obviously I had many opportunities which came my way. I had the banking on one side, I had both ICICI and Citibank, which had offered me jobs. And on the other side, I had HUL's subsidiary, I had L&T, and I had Marico. So I had 5 options and the usual dilemma, which is the right choice to make. Financial services is a very different ball game. Corporate is a very different ball game, which obviously at that point in time, I had not realized as much I do realize today. Far more wiser today to make that choice. But at that point in time, it was more intuition, more my interactions with the people who interviewed me, and obviously a little bit of hearsay from your seniors or people who, are around you. And then I happened to make Marico as my career choice. Again, that was something I heard a lot about Marico. And while I had an option to go in financial services, I was far more comfortable with a manufacturing background because most of my articleship days I spent doing manufacturing audits. So I thought, okay, fine, I understand that industry better. So let me make a choice. And that's how I landed up with Marico. I spent about 4 years doing Marico, and then I quit Marico and joined Shell to head finance for their LPG business. LPG, of course, was much smaller in India as compared to what it was globally. I spent about 3 years doing finance there. And then at that point in time, KN Energy was doing the largest IPO in India then. This was way back in 2006. And they approached me for an investor relations role because I had done investor relations in Marico. And then I said, why not explore? I had to move to Gurgaon from Mumbai. Was not again very sure if it was the right choice or not, but I wanted to experiment with myself. I said, let me just move out of my comfort zone and take something which is a little different. And the place also was different. Gurgaon is very different from Mumbai. I said, let me take a leap of faith and get going with it. That's how I landed up with Ken. Spent about a year, finished the IPO, started looking at investor relations there. And so I completed 4 years with FMCG, 4 years with oil and gas, both upstream and downstream. And at that point in time, I got an offer from the Raheja Group back in Mumbai. So obviously, it was the Mumbai calling. I was in Gurgaon, but always wanted to get back to Mumbai. And since the IPO was done and real estate was at its peak in 2007. And I said, having spent 4 years in 2 different sectors, let me explore real estate. Will get me an opportunity back in Mumbai. And that's how I landed. Honestly, when I came to Mumbai, taking up K Raheja opportunity, I was not really sure that real estate is a sector which I really wanted to be in, because at that point in time, real estate was not as evolved as it is today. It was a sector which was honestly not looked upon very seriously. It was a very condemned sector, so to say, back in 2006-07. But I still took a leap of faith, and Raheja had at that point in time partnered with a fund called Ishan, which was set up in the UK. It was listed on the AIMS market of LSE. And at that one time, I was handling investor relations for that fund. So I said, yeah, it's a different thing. It's a UK listing, London Stock Exchange listing. Let me experience something different. And that's how I took the plunge. And though not very sure whether I'll continue for more than 2-3 years, I spent a good 17 years there. So that's been my journey so far. Something by accident, something planned.
Thank you so much, Preeti. You covered my next 2 questions also. But let me take a step back, Preeti. When you qualified on there, going in at that point of time, most chartered accountants are going into practice,
Right.
and going into industry on there. So what were the options you weighed, and why did you choose industry?
Right. So Jignesh, my dad, though he was from the business side, honestly, I don't know why, but he was very keen that all his daughters, we are 3 sisters, 3 in all, he always felt that his daughters should pick up a corporate job. I don't know why he felt so, but he always pushed us towards taking a corporate job. And somewhere he thought that the girls will make big on the corporate side. And obviously, setting up a practice, especially when you're starting from scratch, is not easy. You have to put in a lot of effort. I would say getting in a corporate is relatively simpler. setting up your own practice, getting the client, making big is not easy. I know a lot of our colleagues have done it, so which is commendable. But maybe this was a relatively easier choice as well, because he was obviously in business and we had no plans to get into his business. So for us, as you rightly said, the decision was that doing your own practice versus picking up a job. And because I spent 3 years doing my articles with PwC and was working with corporates, I automatically got drawn on the corporate side. And then when I did my CA final and I had so many corporates lining up after me, I think the obvious choice was, and when you had corporates like HUL and L&Ts and ICICI, Citi, Maricos of the world, then obviously, honestly, I didn't have too much of a choice. I literally, lapped up one of them, and that's how I landed up being. So I think it was a relatively easier choice for me. I didn't really need to think too much, when I was deciding whether to go on the corporate side or the practice.
Interesting. So you mentioned about the companies you went through, but if we can deep dive into the kind of roles which you handled to finally take up the CFO role. And this is more so from to understand CAs who are in industry as to how is that journey to the CFO typically.
Right. Okay. So when I started with Marico, they interestingly, I don't think it comes very easily for everyone, but they picked up and they put me right into investor relations to start with. So I don't know how that happened and what did they see at that point in time, but I think they had a position in investor relations and they wanted a fresher. So I came into a management trainee program. Generally, Marico takes people at a management trainee and then they groom you for 6 months across various functions. And then they put you in the function which you obviously will long-term pursue within finance. So I went through a 6-month management trainee program in Marico. And then obviously they had an opportunity in investor relations and they put me in IR. So IR again was not by design. It did happen that they had an opportunity there. They were looking for a fresh blood there, and that's how I landed up. And I think that has been a very positive for my career, because generally people don't land up getting those kind of roles to start with. And IR is a very interesting role in itself. It gives you a very big landscape to learn, because at the very start of your career, I got a chance to, interact with a lot of investors, both domestic and global. I used to be part of all key meetings which the management did with various investors. And the outside perspective is very critical, because sometimes you get so involved in your internal matters that you lose sight of what the world is thinking about you, what the external stakeholders really think about you as a business organization. And I got that opportunity at a very early stage in my career, where I was able to understand what investors think about corporates, what do they expect out of corporates, all the quarterly pressures, because Marico was a listed company then. And I understood the nuances of being listed at the very start of my career. So I think that was a very strong foothold which I gathered when I started. And then Marico is a very aspirational organization and very experimental organization. So they generally believe in moving people around, and they give you large responsibilities at a very young age. So they don't really judge you by your age, but they really judge you by your capabilities. So even if you're young, you get responsibilities which probably in other organizations you get at, I would say, mid-level of a career, at not a very junior level, because I was just 1-2 years into my career. And in the 4 years that I spent with Marico, I actually did almost 5 roles. So I started off with investor relations, which obviously I continued all through the 4 years that I was with Marico. But together with that, I did corporate MIS. I got a chance to do corporate accounting. I got a chance to work very closely with the CFO also then. So they put me through various roles, keeping my IR intact, which was a very good learning experience, because rarely do you get to do so many roles in just a span of 4 years. So they keep rotating you every year, especially when you are young, so that you get all-round experience. So I think that has been one of a really strong foundation. So initially in the first 4 years, I kind of got a very good sense of all facets of finance, of corporate finance, so to say. And then I moved to Shell. Now in Shell, I took the role of a finance controller. Finance controller generally, is more focused on financial controls, reporting, taxation. So the non-strategy side of finance, so to say. I did that for 3 years. But I realized that after having worked at Marico, this was not the role I was honestly enjoying, because it was not a listed company at that point in time. Shell was a private company and an MNC. And MNCs work in a very different manner as compared to an Indian organization. MNCs have very set processes, systems already in place. They are largely driven by what the global holding companies decide. There's very little room left for the Indian management to maneuver. You have a lot of things done as per the directions which the holding parent company really gives you. And I realized that this is not the kind of independence I would like. I would like to be far more independent and do lot many things which are more external focused than just doing internal stuff. That's when I said Ken came with an offer. They were doing an IPO, and I really wanted to get back to a listed company, because having experienced both listed and unlisted side, I had realized at that point in time that I want to be in the listed space. I don't want to be in unlisted space. And then when Kane came, though it was a Gurgaon opportunity, I still took it up, because going through an IPO experience is something I had not experienced. So I said, let me take that up. And then I came in just at the time when they were filing their DRHP. So I got to work right from the DRHP stage till the time it got listed, and of course the post listing. Ken at that point in time was the largest IPO of its kind. And that, of course, it was a 4,500 crore IPO way back in 2006. So 18 years back, 4,500 was a big number, and that was the largest at that point in time. And of course, that was by a Scottish company who is setting up shop in India for the first time. So I think that was a very different learning, because again, an MNC trying to do an IPO in India was a different experience, and that too in a sector, oil and gas, which is far more regulated than any other sector, because oil and gas was, of course, at that point in time, a very regulated sector. So I went through the listing. It was a wonderful learning. And of course, that listing was full of ups and downs. I still remember just before we were making the allotment, we got an order from SEBI to change the RTA. We were just the night before the allotment, we were told change the RTA. So you can imagine, and that point in time, we had got almost 5 lakh applications. 5 lakh applications overnight. You have to change the RTA, the entire setup. And I remember the whole night we were running, trying to figure out which RTA will take over and make the allotment the next day. So that IPO was full of challenges and a wonderful learning experience, though I spent a year with them. But I think it was a wonderful learning experience. And then obviously I came back to Mumbai, taking up the Raheja assignment. And then again, that was a very good learning, because I was again doing investor relations, something which I love doing and I like doing even today. And I was handling a company which was listed on the London Stock Exchange, very closely working with that company. So I also learned how a listing on the LSE works, how do investors of a company listed on LSE work, and how things in India versus London work. So again, that was a very nice journey. And obviously, then the GFC happened, things obviously changed a lot. And then we took private, of course, that holding, the London Stock Exchange company, Ishan, they decided to wrap up. So I went through the delisting process also. So that was another learning experience. And then obviously in Raheja, we had, obviously, if you look at real estate, it works very differently than other sectors like a manufacturing or service. It's a highly capital intensive business, and there's huge amount of private equity participation in real estate. You see a lot of private equity money coming then and even continuing to come in this sector. So at that point in time, we had the government of Singapore who was investing in one of our projects. Then we had Blackstone, which came in a series of our projects. And I had the chance to, work with all the private equity guys and actually taking those money in. So that also is a very different experience, because when you're taking money from private equity, you're not just dealing with one, you're dealing with several of private equity guys. We dealt with the KKRs and the GICs and CPPIBs and CDPQs of the world. So then, you learn a lot in the process, though you may shortlist just one and go with one, but at least it taught you a lot. And then we started working on the REIT IPO. Now, REIT also was a very different product. It got launched in 2014, was very new to the Indian markets. Not many people know what a real estate investment trust was. Fortunately, what happened is in 2012, I started working with SEBI, because SEBI formed a task force. They were doing the real estate investment trust, and they wanted to form a team of experts from within the industry. And that's how they told Reheja to be a part of the task force. So I started working with SEBI to actually form the regulations in India. So we were part of the task force which actually came up with the regulation. So then obviously I had the head start because I spent almost 2 years working with SEBI when they came up with the regulation in 2014. And then obviously it went through a couple of turns because the regulation got amended and re-amended, some tax provisions came in, and I continuously was working with SEBI. And then finally, somewhere in 2018-19, we as KRC started thinking about doing a REIT ourselves. And that's when I got the chance to actually start working on an IPO right from inception, right from the time we were, conceptualizing the whole REIT, how will we do, how the structuring will happen, till the time it got listed in 2020. I got a chance, to be working on that for almost good 2 years, in and out, in and out, in and out of, that regulation. So I think, Jignesh, to say my, I would say journey, I was fortunate that it started on a corporate finance side. It went to finance controls, but it again came back on the corporate finance side. And ever since my after my Shell days, for the last, I would say, 18 years, I worked only on the corporate finance side. Now, obviously, when we went down the listed path, I took charge as a CFO of Mindspace REIT. Then obviously now my role obviously has become far more larger, all encompassing, whether it's be financial controls or the IR or fundraising or strategy or whatever be it. Now it's become all encompassing. But I think it started off with corporate finance, and the more and more I think about it, I think corporate finance is one of the very, I would say, key ingredients for you to become a CFO, because the roles also of a CFO are changing now. So that's the way my journey has been so far. And I think if I were to sum up, it's important to understand both the facets. Financial controls also is critical, because without that, you can't be a CFO. But at the same time, the way CFO role is evolving, corporate finance also is very critical.
Great. No, I think Preeti, well said. I think the first IR role was very interesting. Give you outside in perspective very early on in your career. And that really prepares you, because as when you're inside, you're just thinking about, your work, but how the external community, external stakeholders look at it, that's really, really important on there. So basically you said you've done, financial controls, you've done tax, then you've done IR, you've done reporting. So all this roles has led up to the CFO. Now, Preeti, let's talk about multinational companies vis-a-vis Indianized companies on there, or promoter-driven companies. And I have experienced both. When Disney acquired UTV, the same team used to manage controllership roles, which included the accounting, audit, treasury, everything. And that. But when on the other side, MNC, typically Disney, we had a separate tax team, we had a separate controllership, and a separate FP&A. And all these three functions then rolled into the CFO. So, how easy or difficult it is, in both the cases to reach the CFO position. And how should one go about? Let's say, for example, in case of Indian companies, it's pretty easy because you're anyways handling all the roles. So it's just that you handle higher level of responsibilities as you go up. But in case of MNCs, is where you have, walls in these roles. How do you go about it?
Right. So, Jignesh, I'll dwell upon the MNC piece first, because I've spent 4 years with two MNCs, Shell and Cairn. And I would say both of them work very similar. There was not too much of a difference. But see, there is a very big difference working in an MNC versus working in an Indian corporate. As I had said earlier, MNCs work, I would say, in a very set framework. Your ability to keep moving out of that framework is very limited. They expect you to work within the four walls which they decide for you. So I would say the flexibility is much lesser in an MNC. The roles are also very well defined. And there are two kinds of MNCs which I have seen. One, where you have each of the sub-function, as you said, whether it is tax, accounts, and so on, which keeps reporting to the regional roles. Or sometimes you have everything getting consolidated into the CFO here, and then the CFO reporting into the regional or the global roles. So we've seen both of them happening. Like in Ken, I had each sub-function reporting to the global role. So like the IR used to report to the IR head in Scotland. And whereas in Shell, I was a finance controller who used to report to the finance controller in Asia, APAC. So there are two sets of roles which are happening. But I think these are very process-oriented organizations, and I think the roles typically you don't see too much of I would say strategy planning, tax planning, strategy, mergers, acquisitions. Those are far more limited. You have a lot of focus on systems, processes. They want to strengthen the processes. They're very good with processes. All MNCs are extremely good with that, but they still want you to make sure that you keep tightening all the time. Financial reporting, they're very, I would say, sticky about everything and the manner in which you report. Your FP&A also becomes very critical. Your group reporting also becomes extremely critical, because at the end of every month, they want a lot of reporting to go back. So I think if I were to pick up an organization, I would be far more comfortable within an MNC to pick up an organization where all these sub-functions roll up into a finance head or controller or CFO, whatever you call them, and which in turn reports to APAC, then having a MNC where each role is going on reporting, because then climbing up the ladder is far more complicated in those kind of organizations, because it just that you need to keep jumping over so many stumbling blocks to reach that role. So if you were to ask me a Shell versus a Ken, a Shell was a far more easier ladder to climb up as compared to a Ken which had multiple lines reporting to the functional. So I think if anyone is getting into an MNC, this is one thing which you all can dig out a little before you embark on that journey, just to make it a little more easier. And then I think at the end of it, it's your own performance which matters, because there's one thing I've realized: Indians are very, very intelligent as compared to all their foreign counterparts, which I experienced in both the MNCs, that we are a very intelligent, very hardworking lot, and we, all of us, are more than happy to go that extra mile, which you don't see a lot of our foreign counterparts wanting to do. So it's very easy for us to outshine our counterparts in an MNC as compared to an Indian organization, because the competition is far intense in an Indian organization, I would say,
Sure.
than an MNC. So that way MNC are far more easier, and if you are one of those performers, then going up the ladder is, according to me, much simpler based on my experience.
Sure. Thanks, Preeti. We'll move a bit quicker now. I'm
Yeah.
picking up one question from Amar. How many years does it typically, take to stay with a company, to climb the corporate ladder and become a CFO?
So Jignesh,
Just very short. I mean, typically, how many years would you say?
Yeah. So it all depends on the size of the organization. If you're looking at smaller organization, you could achieve that in less than 10 years. If you're looking in mid-size organizations, typically, and if they are listed, I'm talking about listed spaces, then you'll need at least 15 to 20 years. And if you're looking at larger organizations, it could be anywhere above 20 years.
In fact, some of the large MNCs specifically look at more than 20 years when they are hunting for a CFO.
Correct.
I think they have that kind of requirement.
Correct.
Okay, great. Now to touch upon, some of the challenges in your journey to the CFO, if you could share some challenges and how did you overcome those challenges?
Right. So I think this is not something which is specific to me. I guess everybody would be going through that. See, whenever somebody is elevating to you to a CFO, I think it's not just about your technical expertise or your academics, but the moment you get into a leadership role like a CFO, people want to see the softer aspects more than your technical aspects, because as a CFO, you have a large team under you who are experts in their respective domains. So then what does the management want out of you? The management is really looking for those leadership skill set. They're looking for somebody who's good at decision making. They're looking for somebody who is able to take the team along They don't want loners or they don't want dictators, or they don't want taskmasters there. They rather want people who are able to influence and get everybody together. They want people, and I think one of the most important criteria these days is people want CFOs who understand the business well, because CFOs are no longer looked at as finance controllers. They are actually looked at business partners. So they really want people who understand the business and can partner the business. We are supporting the business, helping the business grow. We are not creating bottlenecks for the business. So I think that these are some of the traits which I would say every management or the promoters are looking for in a CFO. So I think the first hurdle which you really need to cross is, are you ticking yourself on each of those parameters? I think that was, even for me, that was the first thing, because when those conversations start in the organizations, that are you competent to be a CFO or not, the questions in and around all of these become very pertinent. And even I had to go through that cycle wherein I was asked, how well would you fare on these aspects? And obviously, unless and until you try yourself to that role, only nobody can tell a yes or no. So that was, I think, one of the key challenge for me to move into a leadership role. Of course, it's not, some part of leadership is coming all through, but a CFO puts you in a different zone altogether. So I think that was one very critical thing. And I think the biggest challenge of an listed entity CFO is you are always on tenterhooks vis-a-vis compliances. The number of compliances that are growing today, and you don't have the room to even, miss out on a single thing. So if you tell me, one of the biggest challenges that CFOs today face are compliances, because the number of compliances which come every single day, and especially for a structure like a REIT, where we are looked upon like an intermediary, their compliance becomes even more difficult. So I think today, if you see how well are you behaving as a leader, how well you're able to take your team, and more on the technical side, if you ask me, it is more to do with compliances, business support, ensuring that the business achieves the performance, handling the teams below. Again, I think it's one of a very critical thing, because today's generation is very different than what you and I were. It's a very aspirational generation. They want to move fast. They want to do much more than what we did. So meeting those aspirations, taking that team along, I think it's a challenge in itself.
True. Very interesting. Let's change gears, Preeti, and talk about tech. Today, where tech is evolving at a very fast pace on this. So what is the role of CFO, let's say from a technology perspective, or digital transformation? And specifically, whose responsibility is digital transformation? Is it CEO? Is it CFO? Is it CTO? So let's cover this entire mix of questions.
Right. So, so there are two kinds of organization, Jignesh, where in many organizations, the technology officer reports into the CFO. In our organization, the tech officer reports to the CEO and not the CFO. So if it's reporting to the CFO, then you know where the ultimate buck lies. But if it's not reporting the CFO and the CEO, I think every senior management is responsible for tech. It's not alone the CFO's responsibility to drive technology. I think every management member is responsible to drive tech. But I think somewhere in finance, the tech becomes even more relevant, because for two reasons. One, as times are changing, all of us, as I said, the role of a CFO is moving from the hardcore functional role to a business role. And if you really want to spend more time on the business side, then you really need to free up your bandwidth. Not just you, your entire team needs to free up your bandwidth. And the only way you can free up your bandwidth is to make sure you embed tech in everything you're doing, so that you spare that time on doing business. So I think technology from that perspective also is critical. And of course, the way things are changing today, if you don't embark on technology, then I think you have become redundant. So I think today technology is not a choice. You don't have an option but to just make sure that, and I think the younger generation is far more tech savvy. Today for them, adopting technology is much, much easier than probably for you and me, because these guys are far more adaptive. AI, etc. I think while a lot has been taught, but I think it's still a little time away, because we've really not seen very meaningful application of AI into our businesses. In some pockets, yes. But today, if you say, do you extensively use AI in all your financial operations? And the answer is no. I think it's still evolving. When we are talking to a lot of AI consultants, even they are trying to build models. They are trying to build, I would say, models which could be implemented in live scenarios. So those are happening. But having said that, today I run a paperless office. There is nothing which is floating around in our offices. Everything is digitized. Every invoice also in SAP is through system. Nothing is moving from one desk to other. We've all moved to paperless offices today. We don't take any prints of any presentations, nothing except if we are meeting investors. But I think most of the times when we meet investors today, we even actually present on their screens. We don't even take physical copies with us, which we used to take 10 years back. So I think today we are all moving to paperless stuff. Today, the same thing which probably, when I ask my team, most of them tell, Preeti, we don't want to keep creating the same presentations. We want some tools which just help us put some data and the presentations are coming themselves. So even today, as we talk, the team comes to me every second day and say, we are evaluating this software, we are evaluating X, so that my investor presentations, my board presentations are going to come automatically. So I think today the team itself is pushing you. And if you as a CFO are actually not going to be tech savvy, then I don't think you have too much of choice left, honestly.
No, very well said. I think it's very important, Preeti, as you mentioned, and CFO is supposed to have a deep understanding of the business. And tech is nothing but just translating the, that business aspects, into a future mode of operation, or, future way of operation. And hence it is important for, finance guys to understand tech so that they can collaborate well in that journey of digital transformation.
Absolutely.
Preeti, we just touched upon deep understanding of the business you need to have. So let's again talk about the relationship, with the CEO. CFOs and CEOs need to have a great working relationship, and their decision making is interdependent and symbiotic. So how do you look at this relationship? And more CFOs are, becoming CEOs. So in light of that, how would you look at this?
Right. So I think CEO, CFO combination, I would say it's a killer combination, because you have one person who's having to drive business. The other one is supposed to drive finance for business. So effectively, both are trying to achieve the same end, but of course, the means are different. And I think that partnership is one of the most crucial partnerships of any business, if you ask me. Because this is one role which is not just a watch. It's no longer a watchdog, but it's actually an enabler. It used to be a watchdog maybe a decade or more than that back. But today we are all enablers. So today we work hand in hand with our CEOs to deliver business. I actually sit every quarter, given that we are a listed company, at the start of the quarter, he and I sit to figure out what exactly do we have to achieve for this quarter for a business plan. Both of us sit and drive the agenda jointly with all the other management team members. So it's not just that him driving, but he and I sit together and drive business. So I think therefore, because we are so much involved in business today, if you ask me, CFO after the CEO, or maybe is the one person who can talk about every function. Very rarely are the functions who can actually talk on behalf of everyone. But today, when we sit with investors, sometimes I even get questioned like, what is the width of the column in a real estate? We go to the sites, with the investors to show them the project. And I still remember many a times I even asked question, what is the width of this column? So at that point in time, you can't say, I don't know. Because not necessarily you are going to have engineers with you all the time. So you could be asked anything, right from questions on architecture, on engineering, you can be asked on marketing, leasing, anything. So you need to be prepared for everything that you could be asked. So today we've come to a stage where I can say as a CFO, I can broadly answer anything and everything which is asked by and large. There could be obviously some exceptions which I may not be, but generally I would be able to answer. So therefore, we are so close to the business, and that's the reason you are seeing more and more CFOs who are actually considered for CEO roles. Now, of course, it's your individual choice what you want to choose, but therefore it's becoming even more easier, because here you have a person who obviously has a very strong finance background, but also understands business better than anyone else. So when I say business, I'm saying every aspect of business. So if you see sales, understand sales, marketing would understand marketing. In our case, we have asset management, so on. But there's one person who understands everything. And when you grow at that level, more than technical skills, as I said, your leadership matters. So when you have someone who understands everything and is a good leader, then obviously they become obvious choices, to be considered when deciding on who the CEO should be.
Sure, sure. Preeti, I find to just extend it a bit if we can go up to 9:10 or 9:50.
Yeah, sure. By all
Yeah.
means.
Great. Because we have many questions on the chat also.
Sure.
So you touched upon being an enabler, rather than just a compliance oriented. And this question is not more from a CFO alone, but as a finance professional on this, because this is typically a conflict, at where do you draw the line, because being a solution provider, being an enabler, vis-a-vis making sure that compliances are in place, your set processes are followed, etc., etc. So how do you just maintain that balance?
Okay, so the way I look at things, Jignesh, is when it comes to compliance, it's zero compromise because I'm sticking my neck out as a CFO to all the regulators. So if something which has a compliance aspect to it, then there is no negotiation. Okay, I don't negotiate on anything when it comes to compliance. Now, keeping compliance aside, there are a lot of business decisions where obviously every functional head will have a role to play. So do finance professionals. And at that point in time, I think you have to draw it's a difficult act, not an easy act at all, but you have to draw a very fine balance to make sure that you play the role of a CFO. You're meant to, in a way, to ensure that you don't compromise on controls. At the end of it, you are one person who has to deliver performance, financial performance. So keeping that in mind, not being too sticky, but at the same time seeing that keeping those limitations in mind, how do you help the business to do things which probably would aid the business and help the business grow, deliver its performance? So I think it's a mental judgment which you have to play at every point in time to see where do I draw the balance such that the business is not getting affected. At the same time, compliance on your duties as a CFO is not compromised. So I think it's an individual judgment. It's very difficult to put that in words, but I think you have to play that fine balance as a CFO.
Great. I think very well answered. I think someone who has asked a question, I hope that is answered. Now, one question here, and I will, just expand it a bit. Zalak has a question that how does a typical day look like for a CFO? Let me bring in my question here is what kind of stakeholders you have to interact with on a day-to-day basis? And, how does CFO engage into those conversations, or how those relationships have to be maintained?
Right. So, okay, if I were to talk about stakeholders, then my stakeholders would be right from my CEO, all my business heads, my team, my investors, the board, the regulators, and the promoters. So these are all the stakeholders who I deal with on a daily basis. So if you were to say the amount of time I spend, I keep changing my role every hour. So every hour is dealing with one set of stakeholder. So for an hour, I'm with the promoter discussing the strategy. Then I'm sitting, but board, of course, I deal with not on a very regular basis, but it's during the quarter ends, during the board meeting, or when there are specific issues to be taken up with the board. With the team, of course, you're dealing day in, day out. Regulators for my kind of instrument, because I'm a REIT, my intervention with the regulator is very large. And I also lead the Indian REIT Association. So I'm like literally interacting with the regulator on almost a daily basis. Sometimes I speak to them 5 times in a day. I'm like every alternate day I'm sitting at their office. So I spend a lot of time with the regulators also, especially from a REIT regulation perspective. Investors, obviously, as a part of being a listed company, you keep meeting investors on a regular basis. You go for road shows, you attend conferences. So if you ask me a typical day, I think it's a day which encompasses many things, right from working on the business to working with the team to handling your day-to-day matters, which is your compliances, your reporting, Then, another moment you are sitting and thinking about some strategic initiatives, then you're talking to the regulator, then suddenly you're talking, to your advisors, whether it be your consultants, your legal advisors. So I think it's a very multitask and a multifaceted role of a CFO. If you're in a listed, if it's an exciting day, if you're in a listed space.
Oh, superwoman. All right. Okay, let's something, Preeti, which your dad mentioned about that all three daughters, he wanted to see them in corporate and everything. So the question related to that, as a woman in business and a successful leader over that, any challenges which you have faced, and overall, how is that evolving in corporate, women at leadership roles?
Yeah, so I have been very fortunate that every organization that I've gone has been very supportive of a woman leader. But having said that, I think it's not to do with organizations. There would be some exceptions, but otherwise, largely, if you see today, they are far more welcoming when it comes to women leaders. And I guess every organization does that. But I think it's more to do with our social fabric than the organizations. I think what happens is you see a lot of women at junior and mid management, but when it comes to senior management, you see the number shrinking. So today, when I sit in the boardroom, I see just myself or probably one another person from my team being a woman in the room. If there are 10 men in the room, there are just 2 women in the room. So that ratio is still very skewed. And I don't blame organizations for that. I think it's more to do with the social fabric. Somewhere when women have to make choices, somewhere down their career, and then balancing a family and career is not an easy thing. It's easy said than done. But people who really experience at some point in time, lot many women have to make a choice or slow down the career. So therefore, I think opportunities which corporates give today are immense. But I think it's more to do with the responsibilities that women actually have to take, that somewhere it's a little compromised career, I would so to say. So I would strongly encourage, women to not stop anywhere. I think things will happen, and I think today our social fabric is also changing. Men are also becoming far more, helpful of women. Taking an equal responsibility and encouraging their partners to move ahead. But I think it's still time that it changes, because today, even if, and I, to be honest, when we are bound to have a women independent member on the board, we struggle to get the people who we want, because they're already full with their memberships, and then getting a women board member is also getting difficult these days. So I think the fabric is changing, but I think it's still some time before you see equal representation at every management level and at board level.
Maybe I'll pick up one word from your last answer, is a compromise. I mean, are there really increased number of compromises for women compared to men when they work in corporate, and more so when they grow up the ladder?
I think from a professional standpoint, no, but from a personal standpoint, yes. Because within my team also, I see a lot many women at some point in time are okay to take a little back seat in their careers to balance out their professional and personal life. I don't think corporates, there could be exceptions. There's exception to everything, every rule. But I think increasingly organizations are encouraging women to take larger responsibility. Actually, some of the organizations even go out of their way to make that special place for women. And I've seen in my organization also, I actually have my CHRO making it very important for every management team member to make sure that they have enough women recruited in the team. We are sometimes given targets to make sure so many women are recruited in the team. So I think organizations and even our promoters want to see more and more women sitting in the boardrooms. So I think organizations are evolving. They are wanting more and more women. But I think somewhere the enabling environment has to also play its role.
Interesting. Now, talking about mentorship, Preeti, and this is not specific to a CFO or so, but anyone in industry, for all the members in industry, did you have any mentors, and or should one have any mentors? How should they select a mentor? and what role does a mentor play, and how does it help in your career growth?
Right. So to answer the first question, I had a mentor, yes. CFO of Marico and Milind Sarvate. He has been and shall always remain my mentor. And I had him at the very start of my career. I think it's very important because that helps, one, shape your career, because he actually guides you doing the things which probably you may not have thought about, or doing something wrong. Second, you should have a mentor who understands your strength, your shortcomings, your aspirations, and is able to guide you, because that's when you get the right advice which you need to move up in your career. And I think I was fortunate to have him in my career, because at the very start he has been very critical of me. At that point in time, I used to always feel, oh, he's being critical of me. But today when I look back, I think it's good he was critical of me, because everything which he told me to correct, I made sure when I moved jobs, that actually became my strength. So everything which, even if today you ask me, he will not hesitate to tell you were bad at this, 1, 2, 3. And today, if you ask my next bosses, they'll say, oh, these 1, 2, 3 are her strengths. Because I knew that there was one person who actually guided me to this. So I think it's important. It's very nice to have a career, have a mentor, and not everybody always has one. And it's important to effectively go to the mentor at the right every time you need, because they are your sounding board. They are the ones who will be able to advise you, right? But it's also important that he or she knows you well enough. Because if he or she doesn't know you well enough, then it's not a very effective mentorship. It's somebody who has time for you, somebody who takes that interest in your career, he's equally concerned about your career. Those are the kind of mentors you need to look up to. And it's not necessary that you always have mentors from your professional careers. You can have mentors who are part of your family. You can have mentors who are, your seniors. So you can have anyone to be your mentors. But it's important they understand your aspirations, your weakness, and are ready to work for you. That's very critical.
Fantastic. I think very important to have a mentor. I mean, one or two maybe whom you can go and be open up actually what challenges you are facing, what problems and how you can overcome those on there. There is one question left on the chat, and then I have one last question from me. So we'll just take a question from Chetan Kaka. What kind of skill sets are required for a CFO?
Okay. I think it is a given thing that on an academic side is the easier part. I'll complete that first. I think growingly, CA, as I'm seeing, is becoming a must. MBAs, people, if you ask me clearly, the preference of a CA versus MBA for a CFO, people always prefer a CA, because today compliances, regulations are becoming far more stringent. The regulators are also becoming far more stringent, whether it be for us, whether it's SEBI, it's NAFRA, MCA, whoever, all of them are becoming extremely stringent. And it's only a CA who can understand this piece well. So to start with, from a technical skill set, you need to be a CA. It's a given. There are some exceptions where CAs are not, CFOs are not CA, but those are exceptions. Increasingly, people want CAs as CFOs. So that's one. The other skill set, I think, there's no defined rule to that, but I think increasingly the couple of things which people are looking for is one, the leadership skills, because you need a CFO who's able to take the team along. So that's very critical. Somebody who has a vision. They don't want people to just come, finish their normal routine compliance reporting. That's not what today's evolving organizations are looking at. They want somebody who's able to think 5 years, 10 years ahead, and then shape the organization together with the CEO to take the organization there. So somebody who's able to think business, somebody who's has a vision, somebody who's able to take the teams along. These are the kind of people today. So when we have our year-end conversations, or when we have the conversations with the board, today, for example, to give you an example, this time the board in my KRAs go to the board because we are a listed company, and the nomination and remuneration committees approves our KRAs. So when we have the discussion with the committee where we have independent members and we have a very strong independent board, the conversations are not in and around your routine. The conversations are around take an innovation in your KRA. What innovation have you brought to the organizations? That's on my KRA. Sustainability is on my KRA. Automations are on my KRAs. So these are the kind of discussions, strategies on my KRAs, acquisitions and M&As are on my KRAs. There is nothing like you close your financials in 10 days, 15 days. Those are not the KRAs anymore. The KRAs are all to do with business, innovation, M&A, strategies. Sustainability is becoming increasingly important. So these are the kind of conversations which a board is also having with you. So that itself gives an indication of how a CFO role is evolving now.
Fantastic, Preeti. I think before I move on to my last question, I think great conversation, great learnings for me, Preeti. I can see a lot of efforts has gone into it. You talk about leadership, team building, vision, and of course the core basics of finance, MIS, treasury, compliance. All this get into it. I mean, heartiest congratulations. I mean, for this journey, it's really a dream journey for anyone in the industry.
Thank you.
And yeah, coming to the last question, any parting words, nuggets of wisdom from your experience which you would like to share, and final tips on how anyone in industry should prepare for a CFO role.
Right. So I have seen, especially when I'm seeing the young people in my team also, I think there's always one confusion between lot many people within financial services and corporates. At the very start of the career, it's fine, you're not clear. But as you keep moving to mid-management, I think at somewhere it's important for you to decide whether you want to be on the corporate side, you want to be on the financial services side. It's not that I'm being judgmental about both roles are equally promising, but at some stage of your life, if you moved in a corporate career and then you decide and say, no, I want to be in a bank, I want to be doing investment banking, I want to be on private equity, then that shift is not easy. I'm not saying it's not possible, but the shift is difficult. If you're on the financial services side, maybe shifting to a corporate side is much easier. But if you're on the corporate side and then say I want to do investment banking, it's very difficult. So I think one dilemma which I'm seeing with a lot of youngsters at 4 or 5 years into their career, they don't know whether they want to be on the corporate side, they want to be on financial services side. So I think it's good if you are like between 5 and 10 years of your career, make a career choice. You want to be in corporate side or you want to be in financial services. That's the time you can still move. Having come into mid management, then moving that becomes a little difficult. So that's one. Second, I think people need to be a little more open about the roles that they are doing. I've seen a lot of people, and especially when people come on the corporate finance side, they feel corporate finance is the most illustrious role in a corporate. And then after that, they don't want to even look at any other role. Okay, now when you want to be a complete CFO, you need to have a complete understanding of all facets of finance, whether it's financial reporting, whether it's FP&A, taxation, investor relations, funding, all of it is important. Strategy, everything is important. Only strategy alone is also not giving you CFO role. But I think somewhere people have seen, especially that once you get into a corporate finance role, and a lot of graduates do get into a corporate finance role, people are not willing to look at anything beyond. Anything below that is found to be inferior. But I think that mindset should change a little, because if you want to be a complete CFO, it's important for you today. If your team member comes and tells you something, you need to be clear that no, this is wrong. But for you to understand it's wrong, you should have done it yourself for you to understand it's right or wrong. But today, if you say I'm only going to do strategy and nothing else, that doesn't work. So I think people should do the other way. At initial stages of their career, they should be far more amiable to do lot many things. And as you keep moving up, you can be a little more selective of your roles. But when you are between your 5 to 10 years of your, maybe 0 to 10 years of your courage, be far more experimental with the roles you are getting, and no role is good or bad. It will be important for you to understand all those roles. And I think one last thing I would say, you need a lot of focus when if you want to be a CFO. It is important that you are clear that you want to be a CFO. Dwindling between CEO, CFO. See, CFO takes you to CEO. That's good for you. That's your luck also has to play a role. It's not always your abilities, but at least be clear you want to be a CFO. You can't be hanging in between. I really don't know which way I want to go. I want to go the business way, I want to go to the finance way. I think once you're clear somewhere, when you have 15 odd years of experience and you're clear I want to be a CFO, then I've realized you'll be far more focused, and every act of yours will start taking you in that direction. So that clarity and that focus also, I believe, is very critical if you want to move the CFO path.
Very interesting, and thanks for sharing your thoughts. So basically, you have to get your hands dirty before moving
Yes.
to this position. Secondly, apart from your base functions of finance, treasury, audit, controllership, all those, if you heard, roles are changing, innovation, digital transformation, sustainability, all these and more are becoming part of a CFO role. So it doesn't end with your basic functions, but a lot more when you reach this position and move forward. With that, I'll just hand it over to the committee. Thank you so much. Very engaging, very interesting conversation.
Thank you, Jignesh.
Thank you, Preeti. Thank you, Jignesh bhai. Wow, wonderful experience. We've had a wealth of knowledge shared over the past hour and a half. So I'll just take benefit of this opportunity that I have to ask a small question. So one of the perspectives of this committee is to act as a bridge, or rather try to bridge members in industry and finance and practice rather, to see what opportunities can be worked upon and how we can grow together. So my question to you is, what does industry look at today in terms of opportunities for various assignments or partnerships with members in practice for basically your consultants or chartered accountants? What role can we play to help the organizations and work and grow together?
Right. So Akash, I think today we engage a lot with practicing CAs. Keep aside your compliances and all, that's a given thing, which any one of us do. Audits also, you keep aside internal audit, management audit, keep all of those aside. Today, we also look at practicing CAs, not just for that, for, there are a lot of business assignments which we get. And today, as I said, we as individuals, we as CFOs, we want to move more and more into business, and which effectively means a lot of our CFO role, we want to move or outsource. Today, for me, I ask myself every day, can I outsource this? Do I need to do this or not? And I do that across corporate finance, I do across investor relations, I do across every single role of mine. And I ask myself, can I outsource this? And if the answer is yes, then I just move it out. I don't want it because I want to spend so much of my time doing business instead of spending on something which somebody else can do for me. So today, if you are to answer your question, on every side, like for example, I'll tell you, my financial modeling is outsourced. In between, I'd outsource making my board presentations, my investor presentations. Even when I'm acquiring an asset, my diligence, obviously, I outsource because I let somebody else do the diligence, give me my final report, then I'll work on it. So almost, I would say, every facet, keeping aside the whole finance controllership, tax, accounts, that any which is all of the practicing CAs are doing. But I'm thinking even about the corporate finance, even in terms of funding, when I'm going for any kind of fundraise also, a lot of it I outsource. Today, obviously, our obvious choices are, and it's easier, I pick up one of the big four and tell them, do this for me. I'm actually open that if you have that expertise outside of the big four also, I'm more than happy. But today we have limited choices. So the easier thing is, okay, just go to the big four, call them, get it done. But I'm saying there's a whole gamut of things which we as CFOs want to partner with so that we have time left for our business. So I think you can look at every single thing, but it's just that we need to build that skill set to be able to offload, for us to offload that.
Right. Thank you very much. We've had a beautiful session today. A lot of knowledge shared on behalf of CVOCA Association and the members in Industry and Business Committee. We thank our opening pair to give a cricket analogy, Preeti Chheda and moderator Jignesh Kenia.
Thank you.
It was a wonderful session. You've covered topics right from learnings from your own journey to practical advice for budding professionals. I'd also be remiss if I forget to ask CA Paris Bhai Savla for his closing remarks. Paris Bhai, if you can please unmute yourself and share your thoughts with us.
Thanks. I'm somewhere outside, so there may be a background noise. But I give the kudos to the President Vinith, under whose presidency this committee has been set up, and the convener Akash for taking this first event of this committee. And this, I believe, it has been much fruitful, as committee has thought this has gone in the same way. And the Preeti has delivered her presentation, her talk in a very lucid way, which will be the path for many budding professionals and the chartered accountants for their growing on the pyramid. Be stay tuned to this events of this committee. Committee has thought of many more events. The couple of such are that moving from CFO to CEO, AI, and other things. Do share your experience. Do share your thoughts. What committee required to do, and committee is very well engaged with the members, and they want to do it much more things for the members in industry, because this is the platform where we want to try to connect our professional members who are in industry with the association, and which we have been trying it for many years. And this, no doubt, this association is growing very good. We want to make it much more stronger between the members in industry and the association. Thank you all. It's just we are too late now. I back to the convener for further things.
Thank you, Paris Bhai. So with this, we thank Preeti Ven, we thank Jignesh Bhai for your thoughts, for your experiences. The committee is committed to work towards integration of members in industry more and more. Our numbers are our strength, and you are a greater part of our numbers, and we wish that more and more of you may participate. Thank you, Preeti Ven.
Pleasure. It's been a pleasure.
With this, thank you. With this, we'll close for today's session. Thank you, all the participants, for taking out time to participate and hear us. And we'll see you with another program very soon. Thanks a lot.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you,
you, guys.
Preeti. Thank you, Jignesh
Thank you.
Bhai.